Okay, we're going to learn two new tenses for first and second conjugation verbs. Remember, verbs have 5 parts. They have person, number, tense, voice, and mood. So we're going to learn all the person and numbers for these, right? First, second, and third, singular and plural, for two new tenses. These are both going to be active, and they're both going to be indicative. So we're not changing the voice, and we're not changing the mood. Voice is whether the subject is the agent or the patient. These are going to be active verbs. And mood is whether this is indicative or imperative, a command, or a subjunctive, a wish, or unreality in some way. We're not doing that now. We're doing two new tenses in the indicative. And these tenses are called the future, conventionally called the future, and the imperfect. What I want to say is that the 3 tenses you'll know by the end of the lecture today will all 3 be tenses of the incomplete kind. Remember, back to the lecture on verbs, that tenses are a combination of time and aspect. And the aspect of what we call the future and the imperfect are incomplete. So when we're done today, you will know the present incomplete, which we call the present, the future incomplete, which we call the future, and the past incomplete, which we call the imperfect. What does that mean? That means the action of all these verbs is thought of as ongoing, as opposed to complete, where we think of the action as finished at whatever time we're talking about. So, this is most obvious in the way you're going to translate an imperfect tense verb. The imperfect tense is usually translated was verbing, were verbing. So, amabam, I was loving. Amabas, you were loving. Amabat, he was loving. That is trying to communicate in English the incomplete aspect, the ongoing character of the imperfect verb. Likewise, the future could be translated as I will be running. He will be sleeping. Usually we just say he will sleep. We use the sort of simple simple aspect in English, just like we do with the present. We usually say he loves rather than saying he is loving. But know that in Latin, that's an incomplete aspect. So that present tense and that future tense are communicating an ongoing action. Okay, so how do these work? Let's start with our basic verb, amo, to love. And we learned already, of course, that we have the stem of the verb to love, of amo amare, which goes there. And we have there's your stem, am, and then we have the vowel, the thematic vowel, the vowel that tells us which conjugation we're in, ama, and then we attached to that an ending, or ost, mus, tis, nt endings. Here I'm going to do the third person singular first. This is how we created the present tense. We took our stem, am, we combined it with this vowel that we got from the infinitive, amare, which gives us an a because it's first conjugation, and we combined it with the ending. We did the same thing with the second conjugation. Words like teneo, we took ten, which is the stem, that e, which is the thematic vowel, telling us it's the second conjugation, and combined it with our ost, mustis, nt endings. So we got tenes, tenet, temem, tenemus, tenetis, tenent. Okay. What the future and the imperfect will do is add an additional infix. Not kind of like a suffix. Suffixes go on the end. Infixes go in the verb. And the infix is going to come between the thematic vowel and the ending. It's going to go right there. The present has no infix, so we attach it directly, right? The present we can think of as just lacking any infix there. But the imperfect is going to have a ba infix, ba. And this is pretty easy. So we're gonna have our stem of all of our verbs, our vowel, and then our BA infix, and our ending. So amabas, you are loving. Amabat, he is loving, she is loving, Steve is loving. Amabamus, amabatis, amabant. We were loving, y'all were loving, they were loving. Okay? Pretty easy. The first person is the only thing that's a little bit different. Because if you attached an O to this, you'd get amabo or something. It doesn't really work. You'll see why in a second. So what you use instead of the O for the imperfect tense is you use an M. So the first person singular is amabam. And you've seen an M once before for a first person singular, sum, the first person singular of the present active indicative of the verb to be. And we'll see it again later. The M does occasionally show up as a first person singular ending when there are reasons not to use an O. So there we go. There's our imperfect. And very similarly, the future is going to be I for the most part. We'll see this is pretty close to working. So here we have our imperfect infix, and here we have our future infix. So ama bit, he will love. Ama bis, you will love. Ama bimus, we will love. Ama bitis, y'all will love. Now, in the first person singular, we're just gonna do ama bo. We're not gonna do bo, we're just gonna say ama bo. And this is why we can't use it here. So ama bam, ama bo. Amo, ama bao, sorry, amo, ama bam, ama bo. That's our three first person singulars. I'll make you produce some in class. The only other tricky one is that the sound combination int is not always, but often avoided in Latin. There are exceptions, in fact there are exceptions in the verbal system, but we are going to prefer often to do unt instead of an I. So instead of amabint, which is what you'd expect the third person plural future to be, we have amabunt, they will love. So again, you actually know we're adding one little extra piece in here, this infix piece that goes right here, but the rest of the verbal stuff is the same, right? You already know your first person, second person, and third person endings, and you know how to treat a stem, and you know how to treat a thematic vowel, a conjugation, which tells you which conjugation you're in, whether it's an A or an E in the second conjugation, right? So where this is a combinatorial process, we can spin the dial on our person endings, we can spin the dial on our tense infixes, and we can spin the dial on our conjugation vowel, whether we have an A or an E so far for the first and second conjugations. And then of course our stem is going to be supplied by our vocab entry. We're going to look to the vocab to figure out what our stem is for that particular word. Hard ones are bomb for the first person singular imperfect, bo for the future, and bunt for the third person plural future.